So I wanted to talk to you today because right now we are kind of seeing what may very well be, or what has the ingredients to be, an insider trading scandal kind of unfold. That's obviously taken hold of the national conversation very quickly in light of the fact that there is evidence that certain shares were bought in the minutes preceding Donald Trump's announcement that he would do a 90-day pause on the tariffs. So what happens now? Like what can you do? What can the Senate Democrats do in light of this happening to try and gather some information here?
So just think of it this way. Here's Donald Trump out there saying all kinds of stuff. He drives the market way down, goes totally into the toilet, gets flushed, moves through the pipes, and then he changes the whole thing and it shoots way back up.
Right.
Something happens in between those 2 points. And that is right before he makes those announcements that make the market say, yay, fabulous, he's not as crazy as we thought. A bunch of people buy shares of stock and they buy what are called calls so that they can leverage and buy even more shares of stock on very little money. The SEC ordinarily would just stop and investigate. They say, whoa, is this either insider trading, that is, a few people were tipped off about what was going on, or is it just straight up market manipulation, even if it happens out in public? The SEC would ordinarily do that, but this is now Donald Trump's SEC.
Right.
So that's the real problem we've got here.
Well, I guess now it becomes a fact-finding mission, and the onus is really on the folks who are going to do the work. And I want to get back to that in just a moment, because I don't want to let the DOJ, the FBI, and the SEC off the hook just because we know that they're going to act in a way that's corrupt. That doesn't give them license to act in a way that's corrupt with impunity. But is there even a way to find out who bought the calls? For example, if there's folks in the administration, if there's folks in the House or the Senate?
Yep, there are records on this. And that's how it is that the SEC and the Department of Justice actually go after people. And if you think they can't track this down, ask Martha Stewart.
Right.
And remember?
But do you need buy-in from the SEC to be able to do this? Is this something that Congress has the power to do without buy-in from the SEC, and also that Senate Democrats would be able to do from the minority?
So the people who have access to the information are people who are in law enforcement, because the question here, the investigation we need, is into exactly the facts of what happened. So at the federal level, it's, like I said, it's Department of Justice, the FBI, the SEC, right? The folks who have law enforcement access. But let me offer one more thought. Congress doesn't have that kind of access. And yeah, in theory, we could subpoena and so on, but that would take a majority and we're back at the same, right? Just back at the same dead end with Republicans. Doesn't let them off the hook, but it just says, can we keep looking for something that might be more effective? State attorneys general also have an opportunity to look at state attorneys general have the same opportunity to investigate, dig in, get what the facts are. So, for example, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, which has jurisdiction over the stock market and the trading that happens in New York, might decide she would take a look at this.
And does that require buy-in from the SEC, or does she have the power unto herself to be able to actually engage in a proper fact-finding mission that would really uncover some of the information that would be needed here?
She has her own independent team,
okay,
and she has her own independent legal authority.
Can I get your reaction just more broadly to the fact that at a moment where obviously the economy is in a free fall right now, the stock market has been plummeting, people's 401ks are in pretty dismal shape. And so, for a lot of this country, this is money, especially when you're dealing with seniors, for example. They're drawing money from their 401ks. They require every dollar that comes to them with the money that they've saved up throughout their lives, thinking that there wouldn't be some madman at the helm who is just playing, I guess, playing chicken with their life savings. And so at the same time that this is the economic reality on the ground for most Americans, you've got video from Donald Trump standing in the Oval Office with Charles Schwab laughing about how many billions of dollars they're able to make. And we already see evidence of the fact that folks knew about this in advance and they're buying these calls prior to the announcements actually being made. So people are getting rich off of this and yucking it up and laughing as if it's just some big game so that somebody who's already worth billions can be worth even more billions. And yet you've got regular Americans who are the ones actually getting screwed over.
Yeah. This actually is the MO for the Trump administration. Can I just remind you of the echo of this that's also happening simultaneously? And that is just yesterday. The House of Representatives passed their budget, moving it forward. And what's the whole plan behind this budget? Literally trillions of dollars in tax giveaways to billionaires and billionaire corporations. And how do they want to pay for it? They want to pay for it by cutting health care for babies and for seniors in nursing homes. They want to pay for it by cutting access to Social Security. They want to pay for it by cutting the Veterans Administration. And they want to pay for it by cutting money for our public schools. So class sizes get bigger. So the little kid with a serious disability who needs an aide so that they can be in school loses the aid and loses the opportunity to go to public school. They want to cut out the after-school programs. This is the Trump administration. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous for the billionaires. Billionaires win, and everybody else loses, and they laugh about it.
And by the way, that would be disqualifying enough unto itself. But what makes it even more egregious is that these guys ran this last campaign on this pretense that they actually cared about working class people, that they felt your pain, that they understood how difficult it was, that housing prices were high and rent prices were high and grocery prices were high and egg prices were high because egg prices were $1 more. Now they're pissing away everybody's 401ks, pissing away all of the stock market gains, pissing away everybody's absolutely necessary Medicaid and food stamps and Social Security, all because they want to just help the people at the very top get just a little bit richer.
Yeah, in fact, remember the direct quote. Donald Trump said repeatedly during the campaign that he would lower costs for families on day one. Right. On day one. That was what he kept saying. Right after he's elected, very first interview he does, he's asked about this and he says, that's why I won, because I promised to lower costs on day one. 6 weeks later, when he's in the middle of this whole tariff and starting into it, and somebody raises the question about starting a tariff war with Canada is going to drive up prices. You know what his quote was? Couldn't care less.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He couldn't care less. And that's what's happened. Now that they've got their hands on the power, boy, they're using it big. Using it for the billionaires so they can stand there in the Oval Office and yuck it up about how much money they made while folks who are really counting on those savings, while folks who are worried about inflation, meaning their costs go up, while folks who are worried about the companies that are already issuing pink slips. All of those folks, Donald Trump couldn't care less.
Right. Right. Well, I would say that in terms of where he's actually spending his time, rather than lowering costs, we do know that he's focused, at least in the last 24 hours, on sending troops into Panama, on trying to fix shower heads so that we have this elusive water pressure that apparently went away, and on and on. So I don't know how that's going to lower the price of eggs, which, ironically enough, just today hit the highest point it's ever hit. But I digress. I did mention earlier in the interview that I don't want to let these people off the hook, that I know that the onus is going to be on Democrats in the House and the Senate and Democratic state officials to actually investigate this stuff. But just because we know, again, that the DOJ and the FBI and the SEC likely aren't going to do anything, it doesn't mean that we give them a free pass. So what would your message be to these folks in leadership with regard to what we're seeing unfold at the prospect of a possible insider trading scandal?
So look, we got to call this out all across the country. We got to do this within Congress. We got to say, we are not moving with you guys. This is not business as usual. This is not normal. We are drawing the lines in the sand here. We get it. We are in the minority, and there are certain rights that the majority has, but we're not giving anything up for free. We have to stay in this fight, and we have to keep underscoring this corruption point, because corruption, working for the billionaires, it's like the continuing theme of the Trump administration. So we have to talk about it. We have to use whatever we've got left to try to slow up the Republicans, to make them turn square corners, not to give them anything. But we've all got to raise this, and we got to keep talking about it. We can't get tired. We can't give up on this. We just can't.
And that's a great segue into my last question here, because, we have seen Democrats begin to recognize that there is a call that needs to be answered in terms of bringing this fight to the Republicans and meeting them on the same playing field that Republicans have brought the fight to Democrats on for so long. And we saw Cory Booker take to the Senate floor for 25 hours as a way to break through and get his message through in a media environment where it's difficult to get messages through. I spoke with Senator Schatz a couple of days ago about how he's holding up 300 nominations for the Trump administration, which is obviously a tool that Republicans have employed in the past against Democrats. And so I wanted to ask you what you're doing to meet this moment, given the bar that's been created by some of your Senate colleagues.
So I've done one of these now. So ordinarily, here it is. It's Thursday afternoon. Everybody would have finished up business for the week and be back at the airports and flying home. But only if the Democrats give up what are called some time agreements. So the Republicans get to vote, even though the rules say they're not allowed to vote until a little later. So my view on this is I'm holding them. I'm not giving up 1 inch. So we're all coming back here at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to start a round of 4 votes. And yeah, 1 o'clock in the morning sucks. But you know what sucks more is to give in to Donald Trump and the Republicans and say, sure, we'll just stand by while you just roll these guys on through who are going to be more of your helpers to try to destroy this economy, to try to cheat people, to try to build a country that works even better for the billionaires while you laugh at everyone else. Well, I'm just not going along with that.
Well, I appreciate you meeting this moment and figuring out how to fight. And look, not everything is going to be some grand sweeping change that's going to stop the Republican machine in its tracks. In some instances, it's going to be a major inconvenience for them. In some instances, like with Cory Booker's speech, it's going to be a way that captures the news cycle and takes it away from them for a day. But I think all of these steps showing the electorate out there who is hungry for Democrats to stand up and do whatever we can with the levers at our disposal. And again, there's not going to be a ton of levers at our disposal from the minority, but finding what those levers are and making these Republicans as uncomfortable as possible in their efforts to run roughshod over our democracy, I think is exactly what we need to do. It's taking big swings wherever we can find it. It's making their lives as difficult as possible if they've shown that the tack they're going to take here is just to traffic in overt corruption. So I appreciate you doing that.
I just want to say on this, because you are so right. We don't have as much power as we want, but not having as much power as you want is not the same as having no power at all.
Right.
And we're going to use every bit of the power we've got. That's what we got to do.
Senator Warren, I appreciate you taking the time today.
I appreciate you.